Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2003 action film Cradle to the Grave. Now, this is a film that I remember the trailer for, but I didn't actually get around to watching it until recently. I think I might have seen like clips on TV when I was flipping through channels when I was younger, but I don't think I ever watched the entire thing all the way through until the most recent watch. And I got to be honest here, I just thought this was all right. It was an all right action film. In all honesty, I wish it was just a straightforward Jet Li movie with Jet Li going up against Mark Dacascos and his henchmen because it's trying to be a DMX crime caper movie, but then it's also trying to be a Jet Li martial arts film, and then it's also a comedy with Tom Arnold and Anthony Anderson, and I just don't think it really is effectively any of those things. So it's just kind of half-assed in that way, but I can still have some fun with it for the action, and I do think it's not quite as terrible as some critics make it out to be, but I could definitely see why some people are not that impressed with it. But before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on it, I would like to give a special shout out to Yule for requesting this review. Now, Cradle to the Grave is directed by Andrzej Bartkowiak, and I probably butchered his last name, but this is the same director of Romeo Must Die, and I liked that one. I didn't love it, but I did like the film. And if I were to choose between the two of them, between this and Romeo Must Die, I'd probably pick Romeo Must Die, but this was still a serviceable enough film for what it was. Could have been a little bit better, could have been worse. But one thing that I felt was actually quite good was the direction. I think the director did, for the most part, a pretty awesome job directing this movie. A big part of why I kind of like it is because I like the style of the direction. I like the flair the director has. I like the way that he utilizes his framing and the pans and the zooms and the uptight close-up shots or the wide shots or the way he shoots the stunt sequences or the way that he shoots the fights or the chases. Like the four-reel chase with DMX is actually a really well shot sequence. And so is pretty much any fight scene involving Jet Li, especially the more complex fight scenes, the ones that involve a lot of choreography. So, from that perspective, this film is a success to me. I think visually and from a directorial perspective, this is a winner. The screenplay, on the other hand, by John O'Brien and Channing Gibson, that's where this film falters. It starts out like a DMX movie with his character Fate and his crew Daria, Tommy, and Miles stealing diamonds for a Frenchman named Christophe from this bank, and they sneak in through the subway and they drill through the I think the ceiling, well, not really the ceiling, but they find a way to sneak into the bank and get into it from underground. And then they use a rocket launcher and like some CO2, or maybe not CO2, but they use some kind of like something to freeze the lock and it works. And they start stealing stuff, but then Jet Li's character, who is a Taiwanese intelligence agent named Sue, he intercepts the conversation that Fate was having with his accomplices, and then he winds up essentially stopping the heist because he calls the authorities. And Sue is trying to get these black diamonds that were in the bank, because they're not diamonds. They're actually some synthetic material that Taiwan developed, and if you put them under a certain type of I'm trying to think stress, So if you put these black diamonds, this material under a certain amount of stress, it can actually become explosive, and the results can be even greater than a nuclear weapon. So of course, there's some bad guys who want the material, and the main person that wants it is Ling, who has a connection with Sue because of the fact that they used to train together. They also used to be working together at the same agency. They used to be friends. Then it had falling out, and then Ling is the main villain now, and so Sue, he's trying to get to the diamonds, and so is Ling. Ling eventually gets to the diamonds before Sue and Fate get to them. And so now it's up to Fate and Sue to team up along with Fate's accomplices, his team of thieves, and Archie, Tom Arnold, this gems expert who's just more comic relief, along with Anthony Anderson's character, Tommy. And they team up and they got to stop Sue and save the world because you can't let these diamonds get sold to the highest bidder. And then on top of that, Fate's daughter was kidnapped by Ling because Ling didn't have the diamonds yet, didn't have the material. Because I guess Fate had it, but then he lost it. That's definitely one aspect of this script that I think was way too muddled. Like, I lost track of things. Maybe I dozed off for like a few minutes and missed it, but it just seemed like that really wasn't that well thought out when it comes to the diamonds, and them going missing, and then who had them, and then Fate ultimately gets them back, but then Ling gets them. I think first, like he gets one diamond, but then Ling gets the rest, and a good chunk of this movie is just a very generic and kind of boring cliche thing about a father whose daughter is kidnapped by a bad guy and he's got to try to find her. And you cut back to scenes of the daughter trying to find a way to escape, and she's smarter than she looks, so she actually manages to get out of her bonds more than once, and even tries to drive the van out of the hangar, but then gets stopped. And I do think that the screenwriters do a decent job in terms of establishing the connection between Fate and his daughter. Like, you definitely do feel the bond between the two, and it feels genuine. And but I don't know, it just tone wise, it's kind of sappy, and it doesn't really match with the tone of the rest of the movie. And that's a serious problem I have with this script. The tone is all over the place. It's trying to be a comedy at points with Anthony Anderson and his antics, along with Tom Arnold, but then it's also trying to be a serious action movie, and then it's trying to be, an over the top kind of almost comic book kind of action film. And I'm like, what tone are you really trying to go for here? Like, just pick one. Don't try to have multiple instances of total whiplash throughout your entire screenplay. It's not a good thing. And a lot of it just seems like, okay, you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for an action sequence. And I have to admit, like, the first 40 minutes or so is kind of slow. Like, there's some good bits, there's some good stunt work. Like, there's a cool shot of Jet Li's character Sue uh, going out of a window on a high rise, and he's falling down from one. I'm trying to think of the right word, like one level to the next, and it's a wide shot, and it's all done practically for real with an actual stunt person. So like that was actually pretty cool. Um, but that's one of the most memorable action bits in that entire opening. There's like a little bit on a train. There's some scenes with Sue fighting some people with one arm, which I don't quite understand why. Like, okay, it's kind of badass and cool the first time, but then he does it more than once, and it just makes me wonder if Jet Li had some undisclosed injury that he was kind of shielding himself from throughout the production. I looked in the trivia and it didn't seem like that was the case, but I'm just wondering why he was only using one arm when it comes to like half the fight scenes throughout the first half of this movie. And because there's a lot going on and too much going on, there's not a lot of character development beyond Fate and his daughter and just some stuff that's said in dialogue to try to provide some more extensive character development for Sue and Lang and so on and so forth. And I mean, I have to admit there are some scenes that do kind of break up the monotony, whether it's a little action set piece or it's just a sequence of Gabrielle Union's character Daria just stripping in front of a guy. But it's not really a film though that honestly picks up its pace and its sense of excitement until like a little over an hour in. And once the plot actually starts to get going and you get stuff like the four-wheeler chase with DMX, you get the sequence at the cage fighting place. It's like some I don't know, some underground cage fighting club, and you get a cage fight with Jet Li and Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture and some other UFC fighters, and that entire sequence was a blast, and I really loved it. And then you have the finale, which takes place at airplane hangar, and you have a tank, and you have helicopters. You have um, cool, but honestly, still really disappointing fight between Jet Li and Mark Dacascos because the fight was longer in the original cut, but the editors and the studio got a hold of it and butchered the hell out of it. And then the entire structure of the finale is way off. I like the idea of the finale having like a bunch of action in it, like a ton of fights and explosions and fun. That's what you want out of an action movie. But the way that it's structured is awkward. It just keeps cutting back and forth between the different little action set pieces. So you have the fight between Jet Li's character Sue and Marta Coscos, and then you have a little fisticuff between Fate and this other accomplice of Lang's uh, near an airplane that honestly sucks. And then you have a little cat fight between Sona, Kelly Hu's character, and Gabrielle Union's character Daria, and that's not that much better than the DMX fight. So you have these three different fights, these three different action set pieces that are awkwardly cut back and forth between one another, and it just leads to a very awkward finale. And it's a shame because there is some good action in there. And I think the Jet Li and Dacascos fight, even though it was cut down, is still quite fun to watch and has some really good choreography and is very well shot and directed and is pretty epic and pretty freaking badass. I mean, it takes place uh, in a ring of fire with like water everywhere because I think it's like raining. So now it's like raining and it's in a ring of fire and the two are trading blows and eventually Jet Li gets the upper hand and he winds up putting the a shard of the material inside of Dacascos' throat, and it detonates and turns him into a crisp. And it's honestly a really awesome, cool way to take out the bad guy, and it's pretty unique too. So I have to give the screenwriters credit for that. But a lot of it though is just off. Like it's just off target. The punches aren't quite landing where they should, and it just leads to a screenplay that is kind of unsatisfying at points. It's not totally unsatisfying, but it definitely is a little unsatisfying because of just how badly botched the finale was. And of course, uh, uh, Fate does get his daughter back. Of course, that was going to happen. There's no way that that wasn't going to be the case. And Fate, he then comes up with this idea to stop being a criminal, stop being a thief, settle down, and all the characters awkwardly say Faith because it's like some saying that Fate's character says in the movie, and it's just as awkward as it sounds. And then the movie is over. And then for some reason, Tom Arnold and Anthony Anderson, they riff during the end credits. Like I'm okay. I'm all right with that concept if it's a comedy or a parody film, but it's not. So it's just another thing that just makes the tone of this movie just feel off. And I just wish that it was just a more serious, more straightforward martial arts action movie with the same director and with Jet Li as the lead and Dacascos as the main villain. And Kelly Hu can still be there. You can have some other, actors, and actresses that are still there in the cast. You could, hey, keep Gabrielle Union and make her the love interest for Jet Li. Um, hell, I think this was intended. I think at one point, I think it might have been intended to be like a loose sequel to Romeo Must Die because Aaliyah was actually originally attached to this. So I'm wondering if that was originally what they had planned to make this a tie-in to Romeo Must Die. But Leah passed away, and so they decided to go into a different route. But I just feel like Jet Li is wasted in this. Like has the best action scenes in this, the best fights, and maybe he's not the best actor, but that doesn't really matter if you have more fight scenes, you have more martial arts. Like I'm totally fine with him being a man of few words and just kicking ass and taking names throughout the majority of the runtime. DMX's character Anthony Fate is just boring to me. Like there's just not really anything about him that's really that charming or that charismatic. The best thing about him is that he's a loving father, and that's really about it. And I mean, you could make Jet Li a loving dad, and then his daughter gets kidnapped or something. If you still want to do that whole thing, like there's a lot of things that you could still do without Fate's character and without his crew. Like you don't need him, and you don't need Tom Arnold either. You don't need Archie. You don't need any of that. And to be honest, with this whole setup, it makes it feel like it's trying to be two different movies at once, and that doesn't work most of the time. And it definitely doesn't work here because the Jet Li movie is better than the DMX movie, even though the DMX movie has its moments, like the four-wheel chase, the four-wheeler chase. But with the Jet Li movie, Dacascos is a really good villain, and he's just very underutilized, is barely in the movie, pops up and then disappears for long periods of time. And if it was just a Jet Li movie, you would have more time to develop the backstory with Ling and Sue, really showcase them, working together in Taiwan, really flesh out that dynamic between the two, and have plenty of room for the full unedited fight at the end. And I think that would be just a much better movie. But that's just me personally. And speaking of Jet Li, the cast, it's not the worst thing in the world, but you can definitely tell there's a lot of people in this cast that they're not really the best actors in the world. So the more dialogue they're given, the worse off the performances are. Jet Li, thankfully, they don't give him a lot of lines, but he still doesn't have as much screen time as he should because he steals every scene that he's in this. And like I honestly just feel like I'm left wanting. I'm left hungry for more Jet Li, more of his martial arts prowess than what I get in the finished film. And DMX, he's okay, but he's not a great actor. This is still one of his better performances, I will have to admit, because there's a um, certain thing that he does add to the performance that makes him serviceable enough. I think part of it is his own charisma. Another part of it is that I think he is a little more believable than some of the other rappers that I've seen when it comes to being an action guy, but not to the same extent as somebody like Jet Li or Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was rumored to be a part of this at one point. And honestly, I wish we got that. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jet Li? That would have been really cool. I wish we saw that movie instead of the DMX Jet Li film. Even though I like DMX okay, uh maybe let DMX have his own movie and then let Jet Li do his own thing. Um, Maybe have DMX and Schwarzenegger. Maybe that might have been interesting too. But like, I just don't really feel like this whole thing with DMX and Jet Li just being kind of somewhat sometime co-stars in the movie is really the best fit when it comes to this cast because they don't really share as much screen time as you think they would. There's a good chunk of it where they're completely separate from one another, and they don't really get together until I think over an hour into the movie. Well, I mean, there's a couple moments where they're at each other's throats a little bit, but other than that, in terms of them actually being partners, it doesn't really happen until pretty later on. And their chemistry is just kind of there. So maybe that's why. Gabrielle Union is gorgeous, just absolutely bodacious in this, just totally bodacious babe as Daria. And Dacascos, I just feel so bad for Mark because he was voted by Jet Li fans to be the villain in this because that's how they cast the bad guy. They asked the fans, and the fans are like, "We want to see Mark Dacascos go up against Jet Li." And Dacascos and Lee put so much into their final fight at the end of the movie. I think Dacascos even helped choreograph it, and then it was butchered to hell by the editors and by the studio. And so Dacascos just understandably it feels very bittersweet about his role in this. And I totally get it. I totally understand why. Kelly Hu definitely showcased why she was the perfect casting choice to play Lady Deathstrike in X2 with her performance in this. Um, I think though X2 might have come out before. Actually, they came out around the same time. But yeah, it's almost like she's just using this film as a little audition tape for the role that she would play in that. Um, I know how the industry, works, and I'm pretty sure, that some people might have seen some tape in order to, get the right idea of who they wanted to cast in that role. But yeah, really, really liked her in this. Pretty fearsome henchwoman. Melvin Smalls, he is not. I mean, just another rapper turned actor, and he's not that great. Uh, Anthony Anderson, I like him, but I personally didn't find a lot of his shtick that funny in this. That's just me. I think there's a couple moments with him and Tom Arnold where they're riffing, uh, and just playing off one another that was funny. But when he's just doing his whole thing, trying to act like he's gay in the beginning, that didn't do anything for me. And the whole bug catcher exterminator thing he was doing really didn't make me laugh. So there's a lot of stuff with his character that's just kind of hit and miss for me, but I think it's more due to the material he was given than necessarily his performance. Tom Arnold is Tom Arnold. Tom Arnold is the type of actor who, in the right circumstance or the right movie, can work, like True Lies. But if he's given an extended part, extended amount of screen time, it doesn't work because Tom Arnold is Tom Arnold. He's not at all that charismatic. He's not a good actor, and I think he's the type of guy who thinks he's funnier than he actually is as well. So he honestly kind of gets on my nerves. I've never really been a big Tom Arnold fan. Like the one role that he had that I really liked was in True Lies, and I think it's mainly due to his chemistry with Schwarzenegger. Because I didn't like him in Carpool. I didn't like him in Big Bully. I didn't like him in uh, some of these other films that he was in. Um, yeah, McHale's Navy. I didn't like that. That movie sucked. Definitely didn't like him in The Stupids. I didn't even like him in Roseanne. So like, I just Arnold. He's just not, in my opinion, a good addition to this, and I think honestly he doesn't really add that much to this movie. Doesn't We don't even need Tom Arnold and his weak shtick in this movie. I'd rather have more action scenes than more scenes of Tom Arnold ad libbing. Um, and the rest of the cast, I mean, Paige Hurd is Vanessa Fate. Fate's daughter is all right. Ron Yuan is a laser tech. Shy McBride is Jump Chambers. Michael Jace is some guy named Odeon. But the main cast is Jet Li, DMX, Gabrielle Union, Mark Dacascos, and the main cast I would probably say is the best when it comes to this film. Uh, Now the cinematography by Darren Okada, it's it's fine. It's not fantastic, but it's well done. The editing though by Derek Bretchen, I thought was a mess, just an absolute mess. What did he edit this film with? His fists? Was he just flying his fists around randomly, or some feet? And that's how he wound up editing this. It's especially bad in the finale when it's just cutting back and forth between these fight scenes and just ruining the flow of the fight between Jet Li and Mark Dacascos. The music by John Frizzell and Damon Grease Blackman is completely unmemorable. There's not a single note of this score that I found to be remotely interesting, intriguing, or stuck with me. I don't even remember anything. I'm dead serious. I do not remember a single note of this score. It's that generic. Now the soundtrack though slaps. Like this is a fucking awesome soundtrack. Like you got the X is gonna give it to you song by DMX, which was used years later in Deadpool. You got Go to Sleep with Eminem and DMX that's in the opening credits. Just a lot of genuinely great tracks and really good rap and Yeah, that's definitely what I would consider one of the best aspects of this movie. There's a reason why that the soundtrack went gold. But it's just one of those movies, though, where at the end of the day, I just think it's okay. I think it would have been a lot better if it was just either a DMX movie with a different co-star, or a Jet Li movie, uh, but not both at once. I think it's trying to replicate the Exit Wounds formula, and I don't think that really works as well here as it did with that film. But anyway, that is my thoughts on Cradle to the Grave. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.